had to force me in the car, because that's something that would be important to be in your affidavit. You can still get impeached on that, but you can get a pretty liberal response with that. Felt like we were going 80. And this is a double-edged sword. It contradicts what the officer said. You know, you could, if you're doing it, you say, I don't really know exactly what speed it is. It felt like 80, but we were going really fast. You can say something effective that. We were going really fast. You know, I'm just not sure about actually putting a number on it, because the officer's going to get up and say, if I believe it's 51 or 56, one of the two, or he says 65.
66.
Actually. 60. Okay. You really.
But yeah, I mean, she can still get the point across by saying, you know, it definitely felt like we were going fast. We were definitely going over the speed limit,
yeah.
And especially since it was raining, you know, it was scary.
Yeah. Now, Judge asked. Remember on the objection, he said, now if she can testify to something, a speedometer that she saw or something like that. If the judge says that, that's kind of a clue to you what the judge is looking for. And all we kind of did in the response was kind of rephrase the answer. And so just be careful and go ahead and re-object to those things where all they do is they just rephrase the answer. Say objection, Your Honor, it's the same thing as what you just said a moment ago. Cross-examination, don't ask why, we've already kind of covered that. On the flip side, got to have a response, we've already covered that. Don't ask any witness what they think, we've kind of already covered that. Trusting Danny was the worst decision I've ever made. That's kind of a statement that you could probably use on the defense, but it's going to hurt you as well.
Yeah, because the witness is going to say, absolutely it was. You know,
yeah.
I trusted Danny, and look at where it led to. I mean, it led to my best friend being killed.
And if you get that question, respond just like that. You act like, the best thing you can do as a witness on cross-examination is to act like none of this stuff is hurting you. I mean, when you have that pause and you're trying to think of an answer, and it's like, what that is communicating to the jury is the answer is hurting me. But what you want to do is you want to just answer the question casually, like nothing that he's asking me is changing the facts that I know. So just be very confident in whatever your response is, even if it hurts you. And if it's something that hurts you, then just go ahead and answer it.
And with the question, where it talks about you made a bad decision getting in the car. Don't feel bad admitting that you made a bad decision. Be like, yeah, I did. I had no idea how reckless Danny was going to be. I had no idea how constipated she was going to be. It was a horrible decision on my part to get in the car with her that night.
Okay. You object to the speed, and now you're asking for the speed in evidence.
Yeah.
Careful about that. Let's see. Are you aware that you were distracting Miss Dawson? That question assumes a fact that is not in evidence, namely that you are distracting. Because you're asking the question, be careful how you ask the question. You're asking the question like someone's already said that Dawson was distracted, and that's already in evidence. So you just want to phrase it a little bit differently, and you just bring in all the factors, all she was doing. It's also dangerous to bring up that point, I think, as well. Because she could always say, it was raining and it was dark and y'all were going really fast. And while it was raining, it was dark, and y'all were going fast. You were screaming in his ear. Well, of course I was screaming in his ear because I was afraid for my life. So it kind of might backfire on you as well. That's all I have for cross. James.
I think you did a good job overall as a witness. I like as far as the way you portrayed it. I think Ali threw you a lot of softballs that you could have hit home runs. I had what Coach Mays is saying is that a lot of the key words like challenge accepted and things like that, you really got to, that's your moment to get that out there, and you want to separate it from the rest of your testimony. So, where it doesn't become just in the thick of it. You want it to stand out. And so like you have to use your different tone of voice, you have to make certain pauses. I like the crying. You gotta be careful not to break character.
I didn't use it with the paper towel.
But overall, good job. I said, watch like what Coach D is saying about those open-ended questions, because you can run all day and you can take his question. His job is to control you, and you can take what Coach Mays is saying and you can take that question, you throw it right back at him. Of course I was gonna zero. I was scared. And you just make him, and he's gonna want you to shut up real fast, and he's opened a can of worms. Ollie, watch opening questions, that was big. But I think your demeanor was really good with the witness coming at first. So that was a good job doing that.
Shanti, if your witness starts to, if the opposing attorney, or this goes for all attorneys, but if the opposing attorney asks an open-ended question and your witness starts to run, he's gonna try to cut her off, interrupt her or whatever. At that point, objection, Your Honor, I ask that the witness be allowed to answer this question, and the judge is going to let her talk until she's tired of talking.
Okay, if he asks an open-ended
Yeah.
question, then she's allowed to continue talking.
Yeah.
And Chandra did a good job.
If he ever asks why or how did you feel about that,
Yes.
the judge is gonna let her.
They said if an attorney ever interrupts the witness, no
Okay.
objection.
But after a while, they'll get on. But Chandra, I think you did a good job. Soft. It was the way to handle a witness like that. And so that's about all I got.
Next witness.
Yes.
Your Honor, prosecution calls Officer Ryan Foster.
Officer Foster.
Please introduce yourself to the court.
My name is Officer Ryan Foster.
Where did you attend school?
Well, I attended school at Georgia Tech, go Yellow Jackets. Received my bachelor's degree in civil engineering. I also received a professional engineering certificate in 1999.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I'm a police officer for the Midland Center Police Department. Also serve on the City Council's Transportation Board.
What are your duties as a police officer?
Well, first I am a patrol officer, and I'm also a member of the FCT unit. Even though the guys, they bust my chops for being on the math guys. Most of them, they have like a military background, but when the accident happens, when they want to know some answers, want to know what caused it, I'm the person they call on.
What is that FCT unit?
Well, it stands for Fatal Crash Team. We investigate the cause of fatal accidents, focusing on accident reconstruction.
And what qualifies you to do this line of work?
I've taken the standard 22-week police training from the Midland State Police Academy. I have attended numerous seminars in road design and safety. I have my professional engineering certificate. I also have a certificate in accident reconstruction from the Accreditation Commission for Traffic Accident Reconstruction 2004. That's not a brag, these are just facts.
Now, Officer Foster, I'd like to direct your attention to September 25th, 2010. How did you become involved in that case?
Well, I was the first officer to respond to the fatal crash on September 24, 2010. They needed a member of the FCT unit to respond to the crash. I led an investigation in the cause of the accident, also performed a complete accident reconstruction and analysis.
Now, we'll get to that a little later, Officer Foster. I'd like to talk more about that night specifically. What did you see when you arrived at the accident?
Well, what I saw, well, first I arrived around like 11 p.m. to start my patrol. Around 1 a.m. they called for a member of the FCT unit, that it was a fatal accident involving a 2009 white Chevrolet Impala. I arrived on the scene around 2 or 3 minutes later. What I saw was the front passenger door had impacted a tree, and the hood of the vehicle had impacted a utility pole. The defendant was standing outside of the vehicle. Two passengers were still on the inside of the vehicle.
What did you do next, Officer Foster?
Well, even though the driver was apologizing profusely, I felt like it was my immediate obligation to check on the two passengers on the inside.
And what did you see when you checked on those two passengers?
What I saw was, later identified as Taylor Hobson, I saw that she had minor injuries, but there was visible blood on her hands and forehead. But in the front seat, there was Mr. Sullivan. And she wasn't responding. I did check for vital signs, but at that time, the EMTs arrived, and I directed them straight to her.
What happened next, Officer Foster?
Well, somehow Taylor Hobson had exited the vehicle, and the defendant, she was just apologizing and just really emotional, saying, Vanessa can't die, Vanessa can't die, she just can't. She also stated that she needed another drink.
What happened next, Officer Foster?
Well, at that time, that's when one of the EMTs announced that Vanessa Sullivan was dead.
After Vanessa Sullivan was pronounced dead, what steps did you take?
Because of the defendant's slurred speech, because she stated that she needed another drink, I began administering the field sobriety test.
What did you do to prepare for these field sobriety tests?
Well, I called down to the station to make sure somebody was there to administer the test. I also read the defendant her rights, letting her know that anything she said could be used against her later.
What do you mean used later?
If she admitted to being intoxicated, admitted to any type of guilt, that it could be used against her later in court.
You stated earlier the 3 field sobriety tests. Are these standard in your field?
Yeah, well, I administered the standard 3 battery tests. They are deemed most reliable, most accurate to determine if somebody's intoxicated. All the precincts in Midland use it. All the precincts just about nationally use it also.
Officer Foster, have you performed these tests before?
Oh yeah, hundreds of times.
And what were the results of Dane Dawson's field sobriety tests?
She failed all 3.
Objection, Your Honor, improper opinion.
How so?
Because the witness has testified that these tests can conclusively determine whether or not the defendant was intoxicated. The proper foundation for that testimony of an expert has not been laid under Rule 702.
Your Honor, earlier the witness testified that he is a police officer, that he has been a police officer for several years, and that the duties of a police officer kind of fall under performing these field sobriety tests.
Has he testified to how many times he's performed these tests?
No, Your Honor, but I can ask.
Okay. I think that if you can establish that he has done these tests numerous times before and he's familiar with the proper procedures to administer them, then his opinion about whether or not she failed would be admissible, but not an outright statement. Do you see the difference there? Because he just testified, she did. But I think if you lay a foundation and get him to testify as to his opinion, then it would probably be admissible. But until that point, it's the same.
Motion to strike.
Yeah.
Officer Foster, have you performed these 3 field sobriety tests before?
Yes, I performed them hundreds of times.
And are these,
Any training on
and did you learn training, or did you have any training on how to perform these tests?
Oh yeah, that training came from the 22-week training program to become a police officer. So I've been well trained in these situations, and I have been in these situations several times.
Now, in your opinion, Officer Foster, what were the results of Dane Dawson's 3 field sobriety tests?
The results is she failed all three.
Objection, Your Honor, improper opinion.
Even though he said the results were, I think it was clear from opposing counsel's question. In your opinion, what were the results?
If I may respond, Your Honor. Earlier, the witness testified that these tests can conclusively show whether or not someone was intoxicated. That is what he said, is that these tests show whether or not someone was intoxicated. Therefore, he has to meet the three-pronged test laid out under Rule 702 to show that he has sufficient facts and data, he had reliable principles and methods, and that he reliably applied those principles and methods to today's case. None of those three prongs have been laid, therefore he cannot give this opinion.
Response?
If you'd like me to lay that foundation, I can. However, I did lay a foundation of how, if he has performed these tests before, and if he was training. If you would like further foundation, I can lay that.
What specifically is it you're saying is lacking?
Sufficient.
You're just saying, if I understand your objection correctly, it's not necessarily whether or not he's qualified as an expert to give an opinion about the results of the field sobriety